Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My clock shows a couple minutes after the hour, so we won't kind of delay our kickoff here. But I wanted to thank everyone for joining, and I also want to take a moment to introduce our presenter, Adam Vicencio. Perhaps you already recognize his name or his voice, as actually he's worn many hats here at ISI. Adam began his career as a level 2 support tech. He was then promoted to the team lead for our Cloud Pro customers, and he's now one of our senior trainers. Little fun fact about Adam, he has also earned the CEO title here at ISI. It stands for Chief Entertainment Officer. He actually hosts our annual Halloween costume during our monthly town hall meetings. In 2024, he won for the funniest costume. So without further ado, take it away, Adam.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so excited to be a part of this new venture here at ISI with the launch of our office hours chats. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their day today and to join us. And in today's session, we're going to cover ISI's Q Analytics dashboard. And my goal is to provide a better understanding of how to access these dashboards as well as configure the widgets. But before we get started, let's go over a couple guidelines. The chat feature is disabled, but the Q&A feature is enabled. So please utilize that Q&A feature to send in your questions. Veronica will be monitoring this channel from the sidelines, so she'll evaluate if some things need to be brought up mid-demo. Otherwise, we'll save all the questions until the end. Once the demo is completed, I will stop the recording and then allow people to come off mute to ask their questions regarding the content I just covered. However, if I would ask that everyone uses the raise hand feature so that we can answer them in the order that they're received. Once those questions are answered, we can move on to any other question you guys might have. And then lastly, if there are any items that need more time to expand upon, we'll jot those down and circle back with you after the call. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into the module. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. First, let's talk about where Q Analytics dashboards are located. I'm going to log into our newest product by going to a web browser and navigating to app.isianalytics.com. From there, you can log into the new engine using your email and password. And I'm going to pull up real quick. This is the site that you'll be on. Some of you may still require the use of a client ID. So if just email and password did not function for you for your login credentials, you may still have a customer ID, and you would be used to that in the classic project, the classic platform as well. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and switch to another browser and log into that. So we're going to go ahead and go back here. So once you've logged in, you're going to land at the My Dashboards landing page. On the left-hand side, you're going to see some new icons. You can expand these out by using the hamburger at the top left-hand corner. You'll see that Q dashboards are located just below the My Dashboard landing page. Please keep in mind, though, that users will only see this option if they're a Microsoft Teams Q customer. So let's go ahead and select the training dashboard. Here, you can see that I have a training Q dashboard already set up. There are some widgets already added. We have an Agent Widget. We have a Q Metrics widget. We have some Donut Widgets and a Time Series Widget. I'm going to go through and talk about how to configure those. But before I do, one of the things I do like to demonstrate, only because, we're getting to that point where staring at screens all day long, I like to switch it up and have dark mode. And we do have that in the product by clicking on the dark mode button here in the upper right-hand corner, and it makes it look really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to that for today's session. And how I'm going to go ahead and add a new dashboard is by pushing the plus symbol here in the upper left-hand corner. You'll see new Q dashboard, and we can name it anything we want. So we're going to go ahead and call this Adam's dashboard. And then you can copy from different sources. We're going to just do the drop down. You can actually copy it from an existing dashboard you already have. So you can just copy the templates and kind of reutilize it. You can do it from the default template that ISI just has a standard template that we recommend. Otherwise, you can start with a completely blank dashboard. And that's actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to start from a blank dashboard to kind of show how I'm going to add the widgets in from scratch. So we're going to push save. From here, you can see that I have no widgets currently on the dashboard. We have Adam's dashboard listed up here, as well as some other options. Some things I want to talk about before I actually add widgets are the different queues that I would have access to. So there's another icon, another hamburger icon here. If I select it, you can see that I have 3 queues that I can choose from to switch between. So accounts payable, sales, and support. Now for this demo, I need to actually switch the date range for the data that I have available in our system. And so how I'm going to do that, and this is also relevant to you and your system, would be to select the date range icon here. The date range is actually going to set what time frame you're wanting to look at within on this dashboard. The standard setting is just the current queue period, which is typically 1 day of data within the queue hours that are configured within the system. And that's something you would set up prior to setting up a dashboard. There's actually a queue period that you can configure. The default would just be all day, and I think that's what this one is set to, but I don't want to do all day. I could do relative, so if I wanted to see, say, the last 7 days or last 20 days worth of data, or maybe the last couple of hours worth of data, you could do that as well. But what I need to do in this situation is I actually have to set it for the December month. So I'm going to go ahead and set it to 12/01, 2024 to 12/31, 2024, and I'll save. So there we're going to actually see our call records and the data that's going to show up for these widgets. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on this icon here in the upper left-hand corner to kind of shrink that back down so we have the whole page to work with. I'm going to stick with accounts payable. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to add some widgets. And you're going to do so by clicking on the icon here in the upper right-hand corner to edit the dashboard. I'm going to select edit, and now I have 2 new icons here to select. The first one here allows me to select which queues I actually want to see on this particular dashboard that I'm configuring. For the sake of this training, I'll just keep all 3, but you could say you did not want to see anything but account payable and sales, but for now, I'll just keep all of them. The plus symbol will allow you to add the widgets. And like I said, we have 4 available widgets: Queue Metrics, Donut, Time Series, and Agent. I'm going to go ahead and start off by going to Queue Metrics. The Queue Metrics widget is going to go show you the number of specific metrics based upon the time period that you're selecting. So right now, we're going to show for this accounts payable queue that there was 26 answered calls. Okay, so I want to expand upon that. So we're going to select the 3 dots, and we're going to edit widget. Now I can define how many widgets are per row, or how many metrics per row. We won't mess with that just quite yet, but I am going to show you that the default is showing answered calls and it's a total count. I'm going to go ahead and add some additional metrics in. We're going to do the drop down, and I'm going to do stuff like service level, which gives me the percentage. We're going to go ahead and do, say, total calls and account. I can go ahead and do, say, let's do abandoned calls, and then I'm going to add in answered calls. Even though we already have answered calls, we're going to add it in again. Adding in again, notice that the drop down and turns into percentage of total. That's because those are the only 2 metrics, or the calculation metrics you have, and it's giving you the other one. And then notice if I add another metric and try to go to answered calls, it's now grayed out because you can't add any more. It would be duplicate information. So I'm going to remove that. And you can continue to add as many metrics. If you want to add every single available metrics and calculation in, you could do that in this widget. It does not limit you to that. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at what I've got, and we're going to go ahead and save this. All right, so now I have some additional metrics in here. It's going to give me this little warning saying, hey, you need to resize it to be able to see all the metrics, which is fine. I'll go ahead and just expand it out. And so now I see all of those those numbers. So I can see, and you know what I should have done? I'll go ahead and edit this again because I don't like the layout. You can use the dots to kind of relay it out. So I want to go ahead and add service level to the front. I would like to do total calls as the next one, maybe answered calls as the last two, and then the final one as abandoned calls. And then we'll go ahead and save that. Now it rearranges, which to me reads kind of more left to right. So here's my service level metrics, which again is a configurable feature. You tell us within the queue what is the time period that these calls need to be answered by within a certain amount of time for them to either make be acceptable to service level or not. And then it gives you the percentage, the total amount of calls that came into this queue, how many were answered, entered percentage, and then how many were abandoned. Okay, and there's other metrics you can put in there as well, but those are the ones I've added. Okay. And so you could add additional call metrics, although I would just add the metrics into this widget if you wanted additional ones, but it doesn't limit you from not having another queue metrics if you wanted to. For now, though, I'm going to save this widget because I want to save the changes that I've made so I don't lose them. And then we can go back into the edit dashboard to start adding in, say, another widget. And by that, I'm going to push the plus symbol. And I'm going to actually do agent first or second. So we're going to select agent, and I'm going to actually drag this widget up, and I'm going to resize it a little bit. I'm also going to shrink this down to give myself some more space. And so right now we're showing an agent widget, which is going to show the agents in the time that took calls or were active during the time frame that I selected in December. So we've got Isaac, who took 26 calls, Mitch, who did not. And we're going to select the three dots to edit this widget as well. This widget allows you also to add metrics. So we've got answered calls. I can put presented calls. I can do unanswered calls. I can even do talk time. And keep in mind also, there's going to be other calculations. So with talk time, you get the average talk time, minimum talk time, maximum talk time. Okay. And you can rearrange these as you want. So again, I want to do presented first, and then answered, unanswered, talk time, and percentage. You can sort the widget based on any of the metrics you add in, but name is good for me right now. And we'll save this as well. So now you're going to see that Isaac and Mitch and their call volume, so presented calls, answered calls, unanswered calls, total talk time, and average talk time. Okay. And again, the one thing I did not talk about a minute ago is notice the colors showing up on service level and unanswered calls. There are features, and we'll resize this to make this a little smaller to make both of them fit up. There you go. You can set thresholds based on what you define to give these colors. So if you have, say, 70% and less service level, it'll turn it yellow. And that also turns that yellow. If you are like 50% or less, then maybe it turns red. For the agent widget, you can set it so that if a certain amount of unanswered calls are over 10, it's yellow, and then anything over 15 turns it red, and that's why this might be red. And you can define those, or managers can define those thresholds for your different queues. Okay. So I'm going to save again so I don't lose any changes. Oh, see, it resized on me. Let's go ahead and edit that, and let's resize it once again. Save. There we go. And we're going to edit this, and now we're going to add in a couple more widgets. Let's go ahead and do some donuts. I'm going to add in 4 donuts. And I'm going to resize some of these so they all fit. We'll add in 2 more. Okay. So the donut widgets, you can add, there are about 5 different metrics that you can set up for them. So let's click on the dot on the first one. They're all grouped by these 5 types. So the queue source type, the queue disposition, queue handling type, queue final action, and then calls answered by agent. So the source type is the default. So I'm just going to relabel this one to be queue source type. And you can make it either a donut or a pie. That's pretty simple. We'll go ahead and save that. And so I made it a pie. So you can see that within the time period that we selected, that 38 of the calls came in through the auto attendant, and then 3 of those calls came through direct. We're going to go ahead and go to this new donut widget, and we're going to set up, let's go ahead and do queue handling type. So again, I'm going to rename it queue handling type. I'll make this one also a pie. And you can see, let's go ahead and edit that. Let's go ahead and save that. There we go. So you can see that 26 of those calls were answered, 8 of those calls were timed out, and 7 of those calls were abandoned. Okay. Moving along. Let's go ahead and do queue final action. And I'll leave this one as an actual donut. So let's do queue final action. Let's go ahead and save that. And you can see here that the final action for those calls, 21 of those calls were completed by the agent. 8 of them were forwarded to voicemail, 7 of them abandoned by caller, 3 of them transferred to queue, and 2 of them transferred back to the auto attendant. Okay. And lastly, with this Agent widget, we're going to go ahead and add in calls answered by agent. We'll leave it also by donut and just calls answered by agent. And you can see all of those calls were all answered by Isaac. So 26 of those calls are answered by Isaac. And so I'll go ahead and save those. Okay. So far we've got 3 of the 4 widgets that are available. Let's go ahead and add in our last one. So if we edit the dashboard, we'll add now a time series. Now the time series, there's quite a few options, and I'll only cover a few. So I'll set up 3 different time series widgets down here. So they show up down below. I'm going to click on the 3 dots. We're going to go ahead and edit a widget. And from here, this is where it changes. We can group it by hours, days, or weeks. So you can change it up that way. But you can also change up the different types. So you can either have a call count, you can do call times, and top 10 agents. If you keep call counts, then it gives you a group by options of like the source type, disposition, handling, and final action. But if you switch it up and do call times, you can actually add in metrics of abandoned time, queue time, and talk time. Okay. And then the last one is the top 10 agents, which just has one metric. You can't actually change it. So let's go ahead and start with just a queue call counts. All right. And let's go ahead and do it by, say, final action. So we're going to say queue final action by hour. And we're going to save. And so what you should see here is that it's showing you, based on the month's worth of data, all the calls that came in, what hour was it at, and what was the actual final action. So if I just wanted to say, like, I wanted to not see transferred and I don't want to see completed by agent or transferred to queue, I just wanted to see abandoned and forwarded to voicemail, then you're seeing just those metrics. And if you find that this is a little too small to see and you need to expand it out, it does help to expand these out. Maybe not as big as I did it, but definitely it might be easier to see if you expand out so that the pop-ups are a little easier to see. Okay. I'm going to move this one over and I'll expand this one out. And we're going to go ahead and edit this widget, and we're going to do a queue call times. And I want to add in abandoned time. I want to add in queue time, and I'll add in talk time. You could change these to also be average, minimum, or maximum, or add more metrics to include that. But for now, we'll go ahead and say queue call times by hours. We'll save. And there you go. Again, you're getting the total abandoned time, total queue time, and then total talk time based on the hours that you want, that the calls came in at. Okay. And then the last widget, which I'll expand out a little bit crazy. Go ahead and edit that particular widget. We're going to go ahead and set this up. And this one, I'm going to go ahead and do top 10 agents. Again, it just shows the answered calls. And so I'll just call top 10 agents. And then you could actually also switch this to days And so then we'll do top 10 agent by day. And you can change the graph style. I don't think I've noticed, stated some of that. You can change the different graph types. So if I wanted an area chart rather than a line chart, you do have those options. And there you go. Majority of the calls were done on 12:10 and some on 12:12, if not 12:13. And that is, oops, I did not need to expand that out so much. There we go. That is, I'll go ahead and save that particular widget. One last thing I want to show you before I end this is that many of these also are, you can select in them to see a certain information. So if you actually wanted to see the total amount of calls for accounts payable, selecting into the widget does show that information. So it does kind of give you a drill in ability to see that information. And again, you are able to, now that you've created all these widgets, to switch between your different queues to see the data that represents the queue data within these widgets. Okay. All right. That concludes my demo.